which is a vital role in this church. There are areas in this sanctuary where people can have better vision and hearing and access for people with mobility devices. And we're working to ensure that future renovations within our building will allow for access for all to participate in our activities. Sometimes we have unknowingly created an ableist culture that overlooks barriers, such as physically getting out to the Wesley lawn for a lemonade. We encourage all members to help when they see a need for someone to get outside or to get somewhere in the building. We want to welcome all people to share their gifts in problem solving and innovation to assure that we haven't overlooked an opportunity to enhance access. We do host our monthly disability awareness talks up in Calkins Hall, and they're in person and via Zoom. Our next talk is October 27th, and it's going to be presented by a member of the Intentional Communities of Washtenaw. This is a group of parents, friends, and family members of adults who have developmental and intellectual disabilities, and their goal is to improve the quality of life for adults in a community living, supported situation where they can have enhanced social opportunities. We hope to see you there. That one actually, as I look at the calendar, is October 27th, but normally our talks will be on the third Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. As we are getting started with this particular meeting, there will be sections for facilities, for our new budgetary process, and for general updates. There will be a brief Q&A that you should have gotten cards. If you have not gotten cards, John White is raising cards. So you should have gotten cards to be able to write down questions. That way we will be able to sift through much more quickly than having someone run around with a microphone. Online folks, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. I will be watching for that and bring them to that particular part of the meeting. We will try to keep this relatively quick so that we can get in and enjoy the clouds of the day. As we get into this particular meeting, and before we get started with the first presentation, I invite you to join me in prayer. God of the administrators and the servers, God of the ministry that is seen and unseen, we thank you for this opportunity to gather as your church and to talk about how we do this. Keep us close to our own integrity, that our service and our witness in all that we do may speak to you and to your love as you have charged us as your disciples in the world, transforming all things for your Son, the Christ. Amen.
Okay, I am John Kazor, one of the lay leaders here at church, and I am going to give you an update on that's the wrong slide. Wow, this thing is not working the way it should. There we go. Oh, let me go one. Can somebody up there help advance the slide to the right one? Gonna go back one. There we go. Okay. Despite all the efforts for technology, they don't always work. So, what we learned from the strategic planning process that we went through a couple of years ago was this church is committed to growth. This church is committed to being relevant and meaningful to the downtown community and the broader community of Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, and globally. So what we're trying to do is take that vision of an active, dynamic, growing, meaningful church and think about how that represents itself in the physical space that we have. As you know, we're sitting in a sanctuary that was built 85 years ago, and things are no longer the way they used to be. So we're trying to understand how the world works today and how the church works within it, to understand how we can better optimize both the mission work that we do, the programs that we offer, as well as protecting and providing some income for the church. So these are all things that we're considering as we're looking at some very big questions, and we're just now starting. We thought we knew which questions we were asking, but the more we learn, the more we realize we still need a lot of learning to do to even know which questions to ask. So we're going through a process now. We're meeting with community groups, with developers. We're meeting with, we've met with Avalon, we've met with Neutral Zone, with the university, we've met with some developers. We will be meeting with the city, the county, the affordable housing teams there to understand what the needs are and to think about how we can be part of the solution to some of these needs, while also fulfilling our mission in other ways. So these are the questions we're asking. We've met with Wesley, and we hope to continue dialoguing with them about how the church and the Wesley Foundation can partner together on any potential development. As we've explored different options and thought, again, we knew what we were doing, we're learning that things aren't, first of all, as easy as they should be, nor is the funding as readily available for some specific programs that we thought there might be. So as we're going through this learning process, we're modifying, we're asking new questions, we're learning more. The plan from this point is to continue asking questions until we get to a point where we have a decent understanding of what our options are. Kim Garworth here, thank you, Kim, went to the Affordable Housing Boot Camp in Grand Rapids. She devoted a week of her life to learn a lot of acronyms and a lot of mumbo jumbo and a whole lot of information about how people go about developing properties. And we learned, first of all, that this church and the location is a very large asset. Many developers were drooling over the possibility of being in downtown Ann Arbor. So we have to be careful as we go forward to make sure we're protecting our interests. But the growth is still the objective, that we want to continue moving forward and making this a congregation that is welcoming, that is vibrant, and is meaningful in the community. Whatever shape that takes in the buildings that we end up having here, and whether we modify what we have or keep it as it is and add something new, that's all still up in the air. But just to let you know, we are moving forward. We are building on the foundation that we learned about keeping the church downtown and making it impactful and inviting people in. So all of the development ideas that we're talking about address all of those topics and more. And again, income as well for the property. So that's where we're at. We're going to keep asking questions. We're going to keep meeting. There is a committee and a subcommittee that's meeting regularly to ask these questions and then go back out and get more answers and then come back. And at some point, we will be coming back to the congregation with some big ideas that we'll then start soliciting some feedback on. But we're not there yet. And you can expect this entire process to take at least 5 years. The developers are saying, well, from the day that you actually decide you want to sign up and do something, it's at least 5 years to get the drawings, to get the permits, to get the construction. So this is not something happening right away, but it's going to take time, and we're working through that process as we go. So I'll be happy to address questions at the end about that.
There we go. Good morning. I'm Kim Garver. I am, my pronouns are she, her, and I am Leadership Council co-chair. And I am standing in for Ann Cox this morning. She is on vacation. And I am part of the chapel redesign team along with 7 other people. And I want to talk to you about the sale of Greenwood and how the chapel redesign project is going. Before I begin, I just want to say I still have goosebumps from the music this morning, so thank you, choir. It was awesome. And thank you to our coffee team, which keeps us caffeinated and hydrated. And thank you to our AV team. It's amazing what they do, and we've asked them to do it with old equipment and duct tape it together, so thank you. Yeah. For the sale of Greenwood, we know this has been a tough process. We were very careful to interview 3 real estate firms. One stood out far above the rest. His name is Bill Skubis. He works with his son. He's got a website called Religious Realty. He only sells churches. He knows what he's doing with his son. He was highly recommended by people in Detroit that had worked with him. We are currently finishing the contract, which should be done any day. So he's not only going to help us sell Greenwood, he's going to help us rent our church spaces so that we can generate additional revenue streams and increase traffic through the church and be more welcoming. One of his churches in town, Bethlehem, has 4 churches currently operating out of one church. So Bill is going to be a great asset. He expects it to take 3 to 9 months to sell Greenwood. If the contract is ready to go October 1st, maybe as early as January, but it could take longer. And we are going to see, we're going to go for the best price and to see what the market can bear. We're selling the church property as long as a couple other parcels next to it and behind it. We are not selling the parsonage. We are in the process of making sure those parcels are appropriately split on paper. And they could be sold individually or all together. Kendra Kerr is also helping us. She's a local real estate agent. And Todd Pasco, thank you, Todd, has been really important in helping us understand the legal ramifications and civil engineering challenges that we face. There has been a lot of interest in this church property even before we put it on the market. We have even gotten a couple of cash offers that are quite good. So we're hoping this doesn't take long and that it remains a church, but we'll have to see what the market can do. Now, in terms of the chapel project, the chapel renovation project is on track to be opened in March of 2025. That 6-month timeline will be a record in terms of construction language. And thanks to Anne and the dedicated 8-person team, we are moving and it is going in the right direction. We are expecting a near final cost estimate on October 1st. That cost estimate has to be approved by trustees, leadership council, and finance. So we are not winging it on our own. This has to be approved by these committees. When I tell you the price of remodeling in downtown commercial space, it's almost $500 per square foot. And it has really gone up in price since COVID due to supply chain issues. Our space in the chapel is almost 1,000 square foot. So you can do the math. If we come out under 500, we're hoping to, because we know that's a big number. It's a shocking big number for those of us who have done home remodels. The initial estimate we got was closer to 350, still a lot of money, but we're hoping to get within that framework. We will have to supply some owner-supplied equipment, including AV equipment at about 10 grand, shades with blackout capabilities at about 10 grand, and liturgical elements and a little bit of furniture, another 10 grand. So there'll be about 30,000 on top of the construction price. In addition, there is asbestos work that has to be mitigated and window repairs, but this will be considered part of the church kind of trustee budget that we would have had to do anyways. So we don't want to think that this is being added on to the chapel project. The chapel is not just to house our new Greenwood contemporary service. So I want to be very clear that that is only one of many functions we intend to use the chapel for. That contemporary service will be new, it will be updated, it will grow. We want your input on how to make that better. And I want everybody here to make a point of welcoming the Greenwood community into our downtown church. Please attend the service. This has been nothing short of traumatic for them. This has been very hard. They've been there for over 30 years, and you can only imagine how deep those feelings run. This will be the venue for our new contemporary service on Saturday nights. You'll be asked to participate in that planning. There'll also be many smaller church events because it's a 50 to 60 person small venue, such as baptisms, funerals, smaller weddings, and smaller unique services. We're planning on holding additional meetings, recitals, gatherings, putting an art gallery in there, and even movies with blackout shades. So this is not just to house the contemporary service. Next slide, please. This is the design. I know it's small. I do have a board. Amy's holding up that board. You can come and see the board in the gray space following the meeting. This is the mock-up. All of it is mobile. Every single element except the kitchen counters we can move. So we can do this arrangement, we can worship facing east, facing south, in a circle, and we are opening up a total of 7 windows, putting beautiful blackout shades. It will be a gorgeous space. We're breaking through Aldersgate to add on for a small gathering space, and we're breaking into the spaces currently covered by the round walls. We are very, very excited about a simple but meaningful new chapel. I think that's it. Okay, so be writing your questions so that when it's Q&A time, we can collect them. If you need index cards, I think that Don put them at the end of each pew. If not, you can tear out a sheet and send them down. Thank you, Don. Just pass those out. Okay, next slide.
Hello, I'm Mary Ann Claw. I am one of the people who worships at Greenwood, and I'm also a member of the Greenwood Task Force, which produced the task force report, which was delivered to the Leadership Council in the spring and defines many of the goals that we would like to see in this transition. As just mentioned, we will have a contemporary service there, which I'm really quite excited about. 100% of what makes Greenwood special, well, I shouldn't say 100% because certainly the building is special, but 100% of the Greenwood culture is going to transition here to our new downtown location. For those of you who have not been to Greenwood, it's an extremely welcoming environment, very casual, very come as you are, very joyful. We're always hungry, so we have lots of food at all times. And that is we're really pleased to transition all of that. The contemporary service will have, in addition to contemporary music, which I think is sometimes a defining element of when you call a service contemporary, it certainly will have that. We have proposed a small band. I look forward to cracking open the windows that are on Washington and State Street because we think that's going to be an important element of our service. But as well, it will have many of the things that has made Greenwood special. And one of those things are what we call specials. The Greenwood service will have an artistic bent. Often our specials, which are 2 periods during this service, where we sometimes have special music, but we also have had poetry readings. We have had blessing of the pets. We have had lots of things happening in those special times that we would like to expand. We also want to emphasize the kind of work that the Justice Group will be leading. We want to emphasize the opportunities for service. So those will be specials as well at Greenwood. Greenwood has, I'm sad to say, not surprisingly, attendance has severely shrunk at Greenwood. That was something that we were, as I said, expecting to see and indeed have. Michigan football over the last couple of weekends has also accelerated that. I don't in any way, though, mean to imply that we have an attendance issue or a participation issue at Greenwood that's different than what we see across our mainline Protestant churches. So a very, very important part of our transition is being flexible, being oriented to a younger population, and that is going to be a really important part of this transition. That flexibility will mean we will be trying different things in that smaller environment of the contemporary service, and we're going to see what takes, right? What do people like? What do they come back for? I would like to close this part of the discussion by borrowing from Tim's sermon of this weekend. Perhaps the time has come to show the world what kind of Christians we are rather than proclaim what we are not. One of the things that we hope to establish and hope to prove is that there are a lot of Christians out in the world today who were originally attracted to some of the evangelical churches which offered casual, welcoming, we will feed you in the service types of environment with contemporary music. And then we will preach a very conservative, non-inclusive sermon. So what we hope to do is to be able to attract folks who are very much looking for a Christian worship experience, but one that matches their inclusive, more progressive theologies. So with that, I will close with that. I would say the third point up there, integration with downtown FUMC, is very important. And although Greenwood isn't very far away now, and we certainly welcome your presence any Saturday evening, we certainly hope to see more integration into the Greenwood type of service when it is very close to the property that you're quite familiar with. Thank you.
Okay, I am here on behalf of the Communications and Marketing team. This team is composed of both staff people and leadership council people so that we could align more strategically with the needs of the church. We've been meeting since February. And our motto is reach people where they are and do it 9 ways and 9 times. So the first thing up there is implementation and promotion of Church Center. I know that you've heard a lot about Church Center. It's an easy-to-use app that allows us to connect to the life of the church, but most importantly, to each other. There is a bulletin, a special insert in the bulletin today. Take that home, work on that. And the most powerful features, why should you bother with this, is the online directory. We are no longer going to be printing a paper directory, so save the one you have if you like paper, and then you can make changes in there as they come up. But the online directory has updated information. It will not require a tremendous effort from our staff to get it right, and as soon as it's printed, it's out of date. You can change your information, control what you want on it, including a picture, so it's a pictorial directory as well, and we do have mechanisms in place to control for security. No online platform is perfect, as we all know, but we do have things in place. You can easily check in for services. There's a button at the very bottom that says check in. I checked in about 1 second today, super easy. If you're in a group, there's text messaging, resources, Zoom links. You can register for events. And you can navigate the website much easier through a series of red buttons on the homepage. After the meeting, If you need help with Church Center or you know how to use Church Center, please gather in the grace space and let's help each other get on. We know we can't throw this at you without support. So we are working with some very talented people in the youth program and adults, setting up a training, and we plan to have an IT support or help desk available in connections. So if you need help not only with Church Center, but how to read an email, how to click on a link, we're going to help to bring the generations together that way. Transparency, this is our third all-church meeting. The fourth one will be in November. We're trying to do this to make sure you all have the information you need. In times of change, communication is the most important thing. We're going to post this meeting, the slide deck, and the recording on the website, and we'll be sending out an email of all of those things so that you can hear this again if you want to. We also post all of our administration, our important emails, the recordings of this on our website along with the financial information. So the goal is to be as transparent as possible. We send out a number of very strategic all-church emails. We try not to bombard you, but to do it when it's important. On October 1st, you'll be getting an email about joining the online directory. If you're already on it, you can ignore it. If you're not, click on the link to get on. Early October, we'll be sending out the slide deck for this program, as well as 2 important surveys. They went out on September 3rd. We've gotten about a 1% response, so I know we can do better. So I'm going to ask you when that email comes to look for those surveys. One is about satisfaction and engagement. What can we do better for you to meet your needs? What are you involved with? And the other is how can you get plugged into the volunteer mechanism of the church, whether it's a one-time thing or an ongoing commitment. So please take time to do that. Marketing. So we are marketing both inside of our walls and outside of our walls. The move towards Church Center is to increase the marketing inside. We send out monthly newsletters from all of our ministries, strategic emails. We print the weekly church bulletin. And the AV team is already planning on updating, after we sell Greenwood, updating the AV equipment in the sanctuary, as well as providing for screens on the sides where we can see things better. As an example of us reaching out, we sent out all church emails to all of you, plus people we haven't seen in years. And a special shout out to Phyllis Rector, recovering from knee surgery, made 42 phone calls to families we haven't seen in a while to bring them back last weekend, and we did see quite a few. Thank you, Phyllis. Marketing outside of our walls, we're on social media. We have our websites here and at the conference. We post special events in the Observer and the local paper. We have a booth at Festival for the kids on campus. We have a Pride booth during the summer. We are exploring the use of an LED sign on the property to make us look more relevant, to make us look like there is something happening in this stone fortress. And we know that when we get to January and opening our contemporary service, we've got to increase our ground game. And that ground game is going to be some flyers to the buildings around us, maybe some bagels, but we know we've got to build a better ground game. And I think that's it. Oh, okay. How can you help? We're doing a lot of work up here. We need your help. The more hands, the better. We need you to be welcoming to new people. Find a face you haven't seen and welcome them in person. We do follow up with new people. We do 2 sets of emails. But what you do in church on Sunday is the most important thing. Invite your friends to join you. Take our surveys. Give us your feedback. Promote Church Center. Volunteer. Attend Greenwood. Help us make those connections. And pray for our leaders and our people in all our communities. Thank you.
I'm John Wilson. Ted Brokaw is the co-chair of the Finance Committee. He's going to talk about our budget, and then I'm going to talk about the new budget process we're going to try to implement this year. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I got to read them off my phone. I want to make sure I give you the right numbers. And I also, before I get started, since I know every single one of you will remember every single number I rattle off in the next 2 minutes, we have some pie charts we put together that show the 25 budget and the fiscal year 25 income in a pie chart form, all broken out into various categories. And all the numbers I'm going to give you now will be that. And I think we can put that on the same email that Kim referred to just a few minutes ago. So that'll be there. But anyhow, for fiscal year 24, a reminder that our year starts on July 1st and ends on June 30th. So these numbers are not a calendar year, but a fiscal year. Okay? But for the year ended June 30th, we actually had $1,382,034 in expenses and $1,397,313 in income. So that was it's actually the other way around, I'm sorry. $1,397,313 in income, $1,382,034. So we had a modest deficit of $15,280. One thing I'm going to point out is we took $120,000 out of either the endowment or the trusts. To keep it real simple, you can think of that as savings rather than get all worried about which is which. But I would also point out that we always take about $98,000 from the endowment every year. We've been doing it for decades. We are entitled to that money. That is income that the church has earned because of its investments. So that is not what it really sounds like you might want to think it'd be. So you can basically subtract about $98,000 from the 120. And then expenses were very well controlled. We actually were $42,762 under budget, under what we had anticipated for expenses. So I think it's a real testament to especially the staff of the church for their really, quite frankly, excellent cost control. We spend our money very carefully. Our budget income that we're planning for the fiscal year that we are currently in, that started July 1st and will end June 30th in 25, that income is budgeted to be $1,460,000. We're taking about $214,000 from, again, the trust or the endowment, mostly the endowment. Again, you can think of that as savings. And the one thing I would point out about that is that obviously that's about $100,000 more than the number I read off a second ago. So the reason we can do that is because we did not take money from endowment in years past. So we had some built-up money that we were entitled to, so to speak. The other thing I'd point about that is not sustainable because guess what? Next year, that extra $100,000 won't be there. So I want you to think about that a little bit. And then the other thing I'd point out is obviously the Finance and Leadership Committee of the finance, where we are financially as a church, is always part of the leadership meeting as well. So we go over it, of course, every month in finance, and then the following Monday, we go over it with leadership. So the point I would take away is that, especially when we talk about budget, that's planning, and we monitor that as times pass and we get actual results of real dollars into the church. So that is just a real quick summary. Like I said, we'll have a PDF document with the email that has all this summed up for you. Okay, and John?
Yeah, so the budget process is something that I've now been part of for the past 2 or 3 years, Ted for longer, and it always sort of takes place at the end of the fiscal year. And it's something that's been part of the leadership and finance group. There have only been minor adjustments over the past several years. And we've gotten feedback from the congregation that it lacks understanding of the budget. So what we would like to do going forward this year is to have a participatory budgeting process to better ensure that the budget aligns with our values and principles. Next slide, please. So, and increase engagement and input from the congregation, and, you know, frankly, if we could get more contributions from the congregation, that'd be great. The input gathered will be used to inform the future of the church. We will schedule an event. We're targeting for November, but we still have to work out a schedule for that. We'll let you know, and we welcome your participation because we would like to hear your ideas. We'd like to hear your thoughts and responses. This is a very important part of how the church is managed and governed. Thank you.
All right. Now we want to give you a chance to ask both clarifying questions or questions that we didn't have a chance to answer that you want to talk about. Hopefully you received an index card. Hopefully you can reach a pew pencil or a pen to be able to jot those down. I'd like to give you a moment to write down additional questions that you may have about the topics that you heard about this morning or other things that may be on your mind. We may not answer every single question this morning. We may follow up with some of that in the all-church email follow-up. But I'd like for you to take just a moment, finish that. If you can pass those to the center as you are done, John is collecting those, and we will start to answer them in just a moment. While we are waiting, I was sitting back here thinking, I used Church Center 5 ways this week. So I thought maybe I would share what those 5 ways are, since I know a lot of you don't yet see the value. The first way that I used Church Center was to respond to an email from the choir director asking who would be singing this Sunday. So it's a nice opportunity for events to know who is going to be there in attendance in advance. Secondly, I actually did my attendance for church from the choir loft through Church Center this morning. I also gave my, I usually, work on my pledge once a month or twice a month, so I did my pledge giving through Church Center this morning as well, from the choir loft. I also used Church Center earlier this week when I was trying to do some just personal planning, thinking about what was going up. I opened the app on my phone, pulled up the, upcoming events, that I was able to get to by going back to the website through Church Center to look at that, looked at the good news and some of the latest news that was listed in the Church Center app. And finally, this morning was Bring a Friend to Choir Sunday, so I used Church Center, the directory portion, to send text messages for a few of the people that I invited directly through the app. It was very nice for the folks who have already enabled their phone number in the Church Center app to be able to just pull them up there, hit that phone number, and send them a text message. So just a few ways that we're starting to do that. I'm so excited to see so many questions coming through. I know one of the questions that was already asked in the online version was about whether or not we will have streaming in the chapel once the chapel redevelopment is completed. And I'm pleased to be able to share that the technology in the redesigned, redeveloped chapel is going to be up to snuff, so to speak, and we will be able to do streaming and have good technology in that room. As a matter of fact, we know that it is difficult to see the screen here. It's one of the reasons we try to limit these slides to 3 bullet points per slides to make it easier to look at. But having good technology in that new chapel is going to be yet another way that we are meeting our needs where we are in 2025 and beyond. All right, do we have a stack of questions yet that we can start?
Let's start with this one.
All right.
Wait, what's up with Nancy?
Oh, thank you. I forgot that I was supposed to start with greetings from our senior pastor, Nancy Lynn, who is very disappointed that she cannot be here today while taking care of her mother. Recently, she contracted COVID again. So I would ask for prayers for Nancy, who is doing quite well with her COVID, but does not want to be here. And also for her mom, who is, continuing to face just a variety of health challenges. Can you access Church Center on a laptop? You can access Church Center from your phone, from your tablet, from your laptop, from any computer device, any electronic device. I would encourage you to reach out to someone on the communication team or someone. We are going to start having opportunities during our fellowship time, our social hour, and we will be happy to show you how to access that. All right, well, staff enter people into Church Center or who don't do it themselves. Because anyone who is a member or a constituent, in other words, somebody who is part of our church community but may have not gone through the formal membership process, you are already part of Church Center. So it is a pretty straightforward opportunity to just get that up and running. As the information in Church Center grows, you will want to have access to that. But don't worry, you're not missing out just yet. But I would encourage you in the next 3 to 4 months to really make sure we get that going. All right. Will the online directory be printable at home? Some people still need paper. I agree with that, and it is up to you to be able to do that. We will come up with ways to make that available. And is Church Center replacing the FUMC website? One of the really neat things about these types of standalone apps is that they work with our software. So we have membership software, we have finance software, we have other types of software, and the app actually takes all of that and brings it into one place. One of the best things about cloud-based software is that it saves our staff from having to do a lot of double entry. So it's not replacing the website, but it is going to augment the website in a way that you will be driven into the app for some things, and the app will drive you back to the website for others. In general, that should start to look more and more seamless. Right now, when you access, for example, I told you my example of I used the app this morning for giving. When I clicked on the giving button in the app, it took me out to the church website. And from my mobile device, that was a fairly seamless process. Advertising. As we continue to do more and more with bringing the contemporary service from our Greenwood location to our new chapel and to our downtown location, part of our external marketing, as Marianne and Kim shared, there is a lot of internal marketing. This, by the way, is internal marketing. We are sharing with you exactly what is happening, so you can turn around and share that with other people. But there will be additional external marketing, like signage that has all of that. That's external marketing. External marketing in other Ann Arbor publications so that folks know who we are and when and where we worship. Who do we want to answer this? This one appears to be really asking, or just, thanking us for transparency, openness, and inclusion around information. Again, the whole point of the surveys and the follow-up to this meeting is about continuing to make sure that the work that Leadership Council is doing, the work that the church staff is doing, and particularly the work that our clergy is doing, is known to all of us. So asking questions and attending is fantastic.
These are questions for finance.
Okay. Finance, I have some questions for you. So, John, I'm going to hand you those to make sure you have answers before you come back over here. Okay, you've already seen them. Good. More suggestions about having good information on the screen. We really appreciate that. We look at this every time and make a lot of notes about how we can continue to make these presentations better too. John, I'm going to let you step in here with the finance questions.
Thank you. There's a comment here, and very appropriate. The latest document on Church Center under financial update is for July. Please share August soon. We will do that. question, how are we reaching out to congregants, especially older congregants, to provide for the church in their wills and trusts? We reach out to congregants in the stewardship process, which will begin in November. I haven't, in my time, I haven't had a specific conversation about addressing congregants about putting them in their wills and trusts, but I think we could do that, and we'll look at that and perhaps incorporate that into the stewardship campaign that will start in November. How are we budgeting for the chapel renovation? It's not budgeted for per se, but we think we have the resources to be able to pay for it, and then either through perhaps taking out a loan, which we assume could be repaid with the proceeds from the Greenwood sale, or perhaps we'll look at accessing some of our savings, and we could then reimburse savings. But there should be resources there to handle that. We've been monitoring that. We'll get the contract here very shortly. We'll know what the real damage is and figure out what's the best way to proceed. Did you want to say something, Ted?
Ted, we need you up here, sorry, for the online community. Great.
So, yeah, we'll get a number, actually I think it's Tuesday.
October 1st.
Yeah. So, and we will have to make some form of deposit or have some skin in the game, quite frankly. In the next few weeks, the current plan is to take that out of the trust. And then when we sell Greenwood, we would repay the trust. Okay. So, that's where that will come.
And then the last one here that I have anyway is, can you clarify zero-based budgeting? And the thought is that as part of our participatory budgeting, while we will have people aware of the things that need to be covered, the thought is that people can say, well, I would prefer that you deal with it some other way. We can look at it new. You can introduce new thoughts into the budget process. You're not bound by what we've done in the past. So. Thanks.
A couple of questions related to Greenwood Chapel move. Easy one was, what about the timing? Where will Greenwood be in January, February, and March? We will actually still be at Greenwood on Green Road. The plan is to move when the chapel is finished in March. This would fall into the next question in the nice problem to have category. Is there a willingness to move the contemporary service to the main sanctuary if it takes off? Is that a goal of all of this work? Again, that will be a wonderful problem to deal with if we outgrow the chapel. That is not, I can't even say that that has been discussed at this point. But obviously a vibrant, growing group will want to continue to do so. Chapel renovation, will the stained glass stay? Absolutely. We view that as a beautiful part of the new chapel. And we also would note that the windows that have been covered up will actually be refurbished, similarly to how the non-covered up windows were already refurbished, but the stained glass is staying. How will the money from the sale of Greenwood be used? Any monies will have to go toward capital improvements, of which a piece is, in fact, the chapel renovation, and then I assume the finance group and others will figure out what to do with the rest. I suspect there will be other capital needs that will have to be addressed. I believe I have caught all those questions. Thanks.
There was one further question for me. Apparently, I misspoke and said that our budget was $1 billion. It's not. It's $1.2 million. So.
Is anybody willing to give $1 billion? We're open to it. Yeah, through the Church Center app. There you go. So there's a lot of questions about the development, which is not surprising. So I'm going to try to just go through these so I can address some of them. First of all, parking. This is a question that has come up at every single meeting, conversation we've had. The parking spaces that we have here are about the same that we've had since the building was built 85 years ago. So there hasn't been any expansion of parking because we don't have any place to expand parking other than the Wesley lawn, which is not our property. And in fact, half the parking lot, or 2/3 of the parking lot, is the church, and the other portion is Wesley's. So as we think about redevelopment, we have to think about the parking question. How that gets addressed is going to be part of the bigger conversation about what's built, how the land is configured, et cetera, et cetera. So we can't answer specifically about what parking will be 10 years from now, but we do know that we have parking, and if we need to identify ways to encourage people who are able-bodied to park in the structure or on the street and restrict the parking lot to people that have more limited mobility, that's something that we can do now without changing the number of parking spaces. Part of the reality of being a downtown church is we have to deal with limited parking, and the city itself has decided they are not building any more parking downtown, at least in the foreseeable future. So we have to work within what we have, and as new towers go up with very limited parking, we're probably going to see that parking becomes an issue over time, an even bigger issue, I should say. So we are talking about, are there ways to carpool? Are there ways to shuttle? There's different options that we have available today without actually building new parking. And as I said previously, the cost of parking is high. If we build a parking structure, the cost per space is about $40,000. So we have to think carefully about how we're using our money. And if we're partnering with a developer, they will have their own opinions and whatnot about the parking that they need to optimize the use of the property. So parking is a question we have not swept it under the rug. It is very much out there. It's part of the conversation. So we can address what we can with what we have today. If people have ideas or see a need, please share that with staff. And again, we might be able to rearrange how parking is done Sunday morning or high-use times. Another question was parking Saturday evenings. Once Greenwood is down here, at a minimum, the parking lot will be closed to any non-church members during that time on Saturday evening. So we will not have air garage activated Saturday evenings, probably starting in the afternoon so that people can get out of the lot. So there will be parking available for those coming to Greenwood service on Saturday evening downtown. So those are some parking questions. Status of the slate roof. It's still there, and we hope it will be for a while. A slate roof has a life of about 100 years. And like I said, we're at 85 years now in this building. So we don't know how long it'll last, but from the work that the trustees have done looking at the roof with contractors, they do repairs regularly to keep it maintained. I saw a piece of slate had fallen off the roof a month or so ago and shared that, so that will get repaired. So that is something that we have to pay attention to. To replace the slate roof as a slate roof is over $2 million most likely. So if we're preserving the sanctuary, which is another question I'll get to, we will probably be looking at other options for roofing, which might include a metal roof that has a slate look, or some other options that we can explore. More affordable, long-lasting, et cetera. Questions or thoughts about cooling the sanctuary? Obviously, we're heading into the cooler months, so that's not an issue. There has been a lot of work done on exploring how we can cool the sanctuary. There's actually drawings and plans, engineering work that's been done to reinvigorate the old mechanical systems that are actually in the building, but we don't use because the fans and blowers have not worked for many years. So there's actually space in the vents here that goes under. I don't know if you know, we have a raked floor. The floor is higher in the back than in the front, so there's actually air channels under there to move air. And we have the option, if we want to spend about $300,000 to reactivate the system and put in a small cooling unit that would not air condition, but at least cool the temperature some in the sanctuary. So that is something that, again, the plans are there. We have to make decisions about how we're spending the money to make sure it's being done wisely. Friday coffee music, that's a programming question. Right now that was a Katie Getty's mission that she had going for many years, and it was very popular. Katie has moved her coffee's programming out to her property in Grass Lake, so there is a venue there now for that. What we do once things are reestablished downtown, we can explore what the options are for music on Fridays or anything else. Is the space going to be designed for quality sound? We certainly hope so. Sound is a big issue, as we know, and there's a team in this church that spends countless hours trying to figure out the sound and improve the quality in this sanctuary. They're also looking at the chapel, so when that is designed, that the quality will be good. So any time we're looking at a space and trying to think about how we can make it better, sound is certainly a question that is being considered. That's a parking question. Will there have to be a capital campaign for all the development plans? We don't know. We are looking at many options for how this can be done. And some of them would involve the church putting up some money. Others revolve around a developer putting up the money, and then we get less through the life of the project. So there's many different ways to configure how a development is done. We can land lease, we can sell, we can condominiumize, there's so many different options for what we can do, and how much money is needed up front versus how much is received or paid over 10 or 20 years. That's all variable. And again, Kim learned quite a bit about those options at the boot camp in Grand Rapids.
Question from online, where are we in the conversation with Wesley?
Where are we in the conversation with Wesley? Continuing. That is the conversation. Wesley's, and I don't know, Tim, if I can speak on your behalf, but the plan to build affordable student housing on the Wesley lawn, we're finding that there's not a lot of money to help with that. There aren't grant resources or funding sources to pay for student housing that's, quote, affordable. So we're looking at what other options are out there. And part of our thinking is what can Wesley and the church do together to make sure whatever we do is cohesive and works for both organizations. And Wesley's timing is they want to move fast. So do we, but we have to be careful about how we move. So Wesley is part of our conversations. The church has members in their groups that are talking about this, so we are certainly working together on this whole process. Have you talked with Kirk Westfall, urban planner, member of our congregation, specifically about affordable housing? Yes, Kirk is on one of the committees that is thinking about the big questions and how to proceed with those. And related to that, please help us understand why the church is talking about affordable housing. While it is important, it doesn't seem to be part of our mission. What we heard in the strategic planning process was a lot of people had questions and interest in affordable housing as a mission of the church. We are looking at the different definitions of affordable. We're looking at the different funding options available for that. Partnerships, we learned an immense amount from Avalon in those conversations. Kim learned a lot at the boot camp about it, trying to understand what's real. So again, part of our objective in thinking about what we can do with this property is to provide a lasting income for the church so that we don't have to ask the congregation for so much. We have to look at how affordable housing or market rate housing or workforce housing or senior housing or affordable senior housing, all of these different options could play to meet our needs and balance with our mission. And how far we stray away from our mission as a church into market rate housing impacts the tax question on the land. So these are many layers of complexity that we have to look at, but affordable housing was raised throughout the strategic planning process, throughout the listening sessions that we did last year and the year before. So we're working on trying to understand that and how we might be able to balance that. We found some examples in other communities that have undertaken this in different formats. So it's not just a single way to do it. So we're looking at what might work for our church on a timeline that's realistic. The other thing about affordable housing, if you're going for grants, if you're going for federal programs, it extends the time it takes to get the work done. And it extends the process of paperwork that has to be filed. So we have to be careful about that. That's a broader question. Okay, these two are both about the same. Can you explain more about the ideas for downtown church redevelopment partnerships? What type of development are we talking about? Exploring. We are open to many things at this point. Looking at the church's portion of this block, which starts at that north wall of the sanctuary and goes to Washington, and from State Street to the parking lot by the Baptist church. What can we do with this space? There's a lot of concern about this sanctuary being taken down and being replaced. That is in conversation, but only as an option. There is no predetermined yes, no, anything like that. We're trying to understand the benefits of preservation from a sustainability standpoint, as well as meeting the needs of the next generations of the church. And again, we're looking at how will the church serve these people not today, but 20, 50, 100 years from now. So trying to understand what the needs might be then, better quality, better sustainability, efficiency, accessibility. Those are all things that we need to be thinking about, and flexibility. So we're trying to understand what role the sanctuary plays in that. There's talk about building around it and preserving the sanctuary. There's talk about building above the sanctuary. There's many different ways that we can pursue this. TBD. We're not sure how it's all going to turn out, but these decisions won't be made without congregational input. Again, we're just trying to understand what the options are now and understand the questions that we need to be asking so that we can do this diligently and appropriately.
Thank you for spending an hour and 3 extra minutes of your precious time this week with us. Before we go, I want to ask that in addition to your prayers for our church, for our pastors, for our staff, for our lay leadership, that you consider doing 3 additional things. The first is that there are just under 100 of us in this room this morning. But when we send our information to the Michigan Conference of the United Methodist Church, we report just over 1,000 members and constituents. So talk about what we're doing. Share this with members who are not here. Share this with people you have not seen in church for a while. Share this with the folks who are working with youth and with children who are not always in the meetings because they are serving our church community in other ways. Secondly, keep the conversation going. One way is to look to Church Center for more information, to look to Church Center for our contact information, to send additional questions, and to complete the surveys that are out there right now. You'll get those in the email that comes out this week. And finally, the third way that you can continue to help us as we do all of the work and the consideration for what the future of First United Methodist Church in Ann Arbor looks like is to invite your friends to church. Church is not irrelevant. You've heard the sermons for the last 4 weeks. It's important to think about how we behave as Christians in a time that is hard and contentious. Invite people to be part of what we are doing. Thank you for being here. Have a great week.